Hello, everyone. So today we have with us Mr. Chandramohan Satyanathan. Thank you for being here with us today, sir. My name is Vishnu Priya. I am one of the editors of the Antonym magazine. Mr. Satyanathan is a Dalit poet and short story writer and a social critic based in the South Indian state of Kerala. He is pursuing research in mathematics apart from being also a translator, editor, and a social activist. He is also the member of P.K. Rossi Foundation, a cultural collective that seeks to demarginalize the Dalit Bahujans. His poetry collections, Warscape Verses, published in 2014, and Letters to Namdeo Dhasal, published in 2016, were shortlisted for the Srinivas Rayaprol Poetry Prize and the Harish Govind Memorial Prize. Chandramohan also coordinates English language poetry readings and many subaltern cultural collectives in Kerala. In 2016, the Outlook magazine listed him as the Dalit Achiever of the Year. Warm welcome to you, sir, again. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because your book was the first, my first encounter with your writing that way. So tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from? Born, raised, and trained?
I'm basically from Kerala,
Okay.
and I grew up mostly in Cochin, and that is Ernakulam. And I came to writing quite late, so I was actually aspiring to be some kind of scientist, so
Oh,
some kind of
okay.
engineer or
That's
a
interesting.
mathematician or whatever. Yeah, and so typically most poets have something to do with literature right from their school days. But
Right.
I wasn't so I came to literature much later.
Okay.
So,
And actually,
that's
that kind of flows into my next question. Like, how did
yeah.
it happen? Like, did you start with
Uh-huh.
poetry, or have you always had a
Yeah, so
liking
thing is,
for?
various artistic forms of expression, actually they
Mhm.
choose us. Then, we deliberately choosing to write poetry.
Right,
So I
right,
was once at a protest rally sort of thing, where people were writing placards of with various slogans and all.
right. And
So
where
that's how
was
I
this
got into
happening?
writing.
I'm
So I
sorry.
think that was
Yeah.
at 2012 December or so. I think that was for the Nirbhaya rape, like rape protests and
Right,
all.
right. Yes, the
Yeah.
Delhi.
So there
Yes.
used to be massive protests in Kerala, Cochin.
Right,
Like near the High Court junction, we used to have like massive
right.
protests. So so I should consider myself fortunate that as some kind of protest site birthed the literary aspects of mine. So maybe in that way it is slightly declassing of in English poetry or English literature. Usually I see that English writing around English tend to be like super elitist uh,
Right.
and not really engaging with the quote unquote political.
So actually, what I wanted to know is, since you sort of trained yourself for at least quite some time, I'm assuming, with sort of with mathematics, which in actually my father is a professor of mathematics. He used to be, like, he's retired now, but he has always, I have always seen this penchant for the paucity of poetry, sort of like the form. Poetry is a very, it is that distilled, that form, like you cut it, you make it short, and when you cannot make it, it's sort of like the
Yeah.
molecule or
Uh-huh.
heart of an
Yeah,
idea
exactly.
presented in the
Yeah,
most
it's like
aesthetic form.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
there is a
I
very
think that, yeah.
mathematical, what should I say, I'm actually at loss of the right word. Like an optimization goes on when you like with the
Uh,
form of poetry, even if
it's
it
irreducible, something like that.
irreducible. Yes. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just wanted to know if these, your training as a mathematician and your practice as a poet, if
Yeah.
there were any underlying undercurrent, like connection, interlinks. So
You know,
yeah, that.
I really don't think. I really don't think so. Like both are very different. And there is a school of poetry where a lot of mathematical tools, like mathematical terms, are used. But that's a
Right.
subgenre. There's a
Okay.
subgenre where people are familiar with from science related stuff, and they use like wavelength, spectrum,
Right, right, right.
gravity.
And also,
They
even
use it
even
very
with,
effectively.
Yes, and also with,
Yeah,
you
I've seen a lot
see,
of
the
people use it
meters and
effectively. Yeah, yeah. No. But the metrics in perceived, what is perceived as metrics in poetry
Mhm.
and what is perceived as some kind of measuring unit in math are very different. In math, sorry, in poetry, it's about phonetics. Like, something is written in
Right, right,
meter.
right.
It has
Do
that
you concern
height.
yourself with that, like English
No, not really, not
meters and
really,
all?
not really.
No.
Yeah, up to now, I have written only free verse, but I do admire poets who can write, say, tersa rima, or who can
Right,
write ghazal, or like, who
right,
have
right, right.
mastery of form. So definitely mastery of form is some kind of the poet's commitment to the technique of writing or his craft of writing, etc. So that's
Right.
something I've always idolized. But I have not really written a good ghazal or even rhyming, like a lot of
Rhyming
people write
poems,
couplets.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
couplets, right, which are very effective.
One.
But I've not really tried that up to now. But eventually, those are my ideals.
We'll move on to the book that I read, The Life After Babel. So we have a little bit more
Uh,
focused conversation. And I found your poems often sort of ventured into uh, the realm of translation, the idea of translation, and how it invades the sanctity of a source art and language and all of that. So I wanted to hear more, your thoughts on this, because I found that quite interesting. I mean, that was I never thought about translation in that way before. So I wanted to know, like, if you could just share a little bit more of
yeah,
your
yeah.
thoughts.
So the thing is, if you look at academia, like if you're in the English literary world, like a department of studies in English all over India, like worldwide in the West, anywhere, you can see that something that pertains to South Asia, Dalit literature is a fad in the academia. It's some kind of fad, and a lot of people do PhD on Dalit literature, like Dalit related lives are scrutinized, or like literary texts, cultural texts by Dalit authors are very much thoroughly scrutinized. But there is a slight glitch to it. The sense that what is being deliberated upon is in the English language, right? So somebody has already translated that text from whatsoever language it was written to English. So there is a huge amount of there is this potential risk of a lot of damage, a lot of damage that
Right,
could be done
right.
to the text or in the act of translation. For example, if you look at some extreme cases, some novels in Kannada are written in the specific Dalit dialect,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
then somebody else has to translate it from the dialect to mainstream Kannada as we understand it today, the print language
Okay.
Kannada.
Hmm.
From the print language Kannada, somebody has to like commission a translation into the English language. So it's twice translated and twice removed from the source and probably like maimed. I don't know, probably
Hmm.
maimed or probably misunderstood, probably what is it, politically pasteurized to be consumed by the academia. So in
Right.
that way, there is a process of I don't know, taming, a process of I don't know, commercialization or something. Coming into the act of reading, act of thoroughly what is it, engaging with literature. So this this act of translation, the asymmetry in power relations in the act of translation is something I've attempted in the subsection Love After Babel. So Love After Babel
Right.
is like where I look at like what may happen in translation, how like access to a language may what is it, mar or like may empower or what is it,
Right, right.
handicap or whatever, all those issues about
But
like.
but don't you think translation also sort of expands the
So,
possibility
so
of
the
it?
point is not that I'm against translation. I
Right.
call for I'm critiquing the current state of translation and
Okay.
making a suggestion for a much more sensitive, much more socially
Mm.
engaged translation, in which the translator is also a very important mediator in the whole process.
Oh, yes,
What now happens
absolutely.
is,
Yes.
what now happens is somebody who has absolutely no engagement with any feminist movement is asked to translate a feminist text,
Right.
and which could result in grave errors, something like that.
Right, right, right,
So
right.
yeah, so I'm
Yes.
asking for a more informed act of translation in which. So if you look at
Ah,
there was a recent controversy about a white translator translating Amanda Gorman's inauguration poem.
right.
Those aspects have to kick in so that the original text doesn't lose its its cultural
history
poignancy.
and
You know,
the
some kind of,
whole. Yes, yes, yes. But then you see, like I'm asking you this because I've been attempting to translate like a fiction in that is written in a dialect, in a Bengali dialect, to English. So the dialect that deal with the dialect is really risky, I feel. I mean, if
yeah,
not
yeah,
risky, it's very nerve wracking for a translator to kind of to like how to even approach dialect as a translator. I mean, since you're a poet and a translator, do you have a take on that? Because I find myself
yeah.
at
So
loss
yeah,
personally, because I
yeah,
don't know. I mean, sometimes people it's a very common method of uh, maybe if you are like using American English, sometimes people will go like take recourse to African American dialect to sort of translate some other like maybe another local dialect of the source language. But that in my mind, like these two dialects come from very different histories, right? I mean, I can but it sort of again it maims, and the loss is there's a sense of loss even if I end up doing that. So I wanted to know your take on that. Do you
yeah,
have
yeah.
a method?
So yeah, yeah, yeah. So my immediate memory is that there is a profound statement by John Paul Sartre who says the
Hmm.
specific traits of a society correspond exactly to the untranslatable locutions of its language. So if you are
Right,
engaging with a tribal society, so what remains a phrase that is untranslatable? This phrase has their soul. So a
right,
particular
right.
culture, yeah, particular tribal community in Kerala. So there are few words that we do not know, or certain phrases, or certain
Even
grammatical.
certain tones, you see, I mean
Yeah, yeah,
even the lilt of language, sometimes the way
yeah,
it
exactly.
flows or like
Mm,
resonates, it's
yeah,
just impossible to like carry it forward with I don't know, maybe a very like something as sophisticated or like quote unquote white uh, language, right? But then do you think that we should keep attempting, right? I mean, with an you believe in an informed attempt rather than
yeah,
uh,
exactly, exactly.
totally giving
Yeah.
up on the idea
So
that
like
it's not
someone like
possible.
you has to invest a certain amount of energy to know about that community,
Right,
whose culture text you're translating, so that when you're writing about something where you are an outsider, maybe you get it right. Something like
right, right, right. At least there should be some kind of a collaboration, like with the
yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Okay, so okay, let's before we move on to the question, would you read us one of your poems? That would be
yeah. Okay.
nice.
Yeah. So I'll read the poem. In the twilight of my dialect. So that this poem is about it's my engagement with a Baladir sort of person, kind of
Mhm.
spiritual lead community. So this person is similar to the concept of Grayat in Africa.
Right.
So Grayat, someone who sings, he knows the community history. So if you tell him our surname, he will tell you, which clan you
Where you
come
come
from,
from,
and
your roots.
yeah,
Okay.
our roots, yeah. So, so this poem is like, he has these two lines, which says, "Invisible are the traces of my race, innumerable are tales of races." So, which talks about dearth of history, like when recorded history doesn't have Dalit versions in it, it leads to a kind of a sense of poverty, poverty in which our stories are missing. Okay, so in the twilight of my dialect, on the songs of Poikela, invisible are the traces of my race. Innumerable are the tales of races. Vaikilapachan. Translation myself. The shadow of my memory, an unreliable shadow of memory. Italo Calvino. I am the poet fixing images from the abyss of time into the canvas of the past, where myth and history are miscible with the precision and swiftness of a forked tongue cobra strike. To retrieve my memory, I tame an eagle with my lyrics. When sung with my blood-red tongue, the eagle glides over my landscape, scanning for rivulets in my bloodstream, veering from my trail of prints. I am the aerial roots of a banyan tree. I grip the aerial roots of a banyan tree with my palm. I envisage an oral lyric swaying with the winds of the time. I grip the aerial roots of a banyan tree with my palm. I envisage an oral lyric swaying with the winds of time. After being scripted into the soil, roots seek architecture with breathing space for all, while I inhale an anti-clockwise breath. In the preordained oral ellipse of a prophecy, I retrieve myself. In the preordained oral ellipse of a prophecy, I retrieve myself. Yeah. So basically, this poem talks about, like,
Thank you. Wonderful.
all these oral stories that I may be able to write down.
Right.
All the stories that are passed on from year to year, never scripted down. Like, there
Right.
is an act of history writing when I write these poems, something like
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right. But then, yes, I mean, that is something, your act of writing, I feel the crisis point that we were discussing about translation, your art becomes sort of tries to occupy that space that you deem as untranslatable. I mean, do you agree with that? Or I mean, that's what I thought, because from a person coming with those stories and sort of reaching out, it's like having your roots in the art, and then you also have aerial roots. So your body of art has two roots now, like with your exposure to a
Yeah.
to
So the thing is, no, my I would position myself as, claiming la- a larger degree of agency over my own story. For example, if I were a Malayalam
right.
poet and I had written something in Malayalam and somebody had translated in English and read this out, there could be there is a certain degree of opaqueness or a certain degree of, perceived sense of violence, which I cut out.
Do you sometimes, it is again a very subjective creative question, that do you also, when you in the process of writing, do you also have go through like moments of dilemma with phrases that you want to use, phrases that come from your mother language and between English? Like, do you have that kind of conflicts going on in your writing process, or no?
Not really, not really. But even though the conversations happen in, Malayalam around me, a
Mhm.
lot could be lost in anglicization. When I try to
Yes.
put it down in English, it has to be, like, reimagined, or, I need to self-translate myself into English, something like that. Like, I need to
Yes.
self-translate myself into English. So I have like two conflicting selves in me, which is like
Yes.
the social life in Malayalam and the literary life in English. So it's in a way an opportunity to recast oneself.
Yes. Yes.
It's
I
a
was
it's
actually
an
wanted to.
opportunity to, like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was getting there. Yes.
reimagine, yeah, reimagine ourselves as somebody who is in charge of himself, right? Who can sort of has a greater say over his own destiny than uh, than somebody who writes in Malayalam, maybe.
Right. I mean, and there is this. I don't know if it's artistic, but there is this uh, gap, or like a crevice between these two selves. Right. The one that is familiar with the roots, Malayalam roots, and the one that creates art in English. And
Yeah, definitely,
sometimes,
definitely.
and then I've heard from other writers that this sometimes the distance sort of empowers them, and sometimes it causes them a lot of pain. So
True,
which
true.
is it? Which side do
No,
you
no,
belong to?
it's both. Like, it's both for me. Like, in the sense, that is something I need to maneuver, right? That is something,
Right.
you need to, like, deal with, and, what is it? Tame it, whatever, overcome, right? So that's something I need
Right.
to work on, and, like, so in a way, like, see that there are a lot of poets who I believe who are from Africa, or the Afro Americans, who have achieved what I'm trying to do. You know,
Right.
like yeah, they have like uh, brought in that cultural situation sort of thing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, situation sort of thing into what like into the English language so well, you know, like how they
Right.
bring in the church, or how they bring in aspects of memory, etc. So I
Okay.
have some kind of fodder already to compare myself with. That's one
Okay.
thing. Secondly, I always feel that, you know, the more I learn about my own vernacular culture, the
Right.
more blessed I am in terms of what I can write. Yeah.
Right. 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 Okay. That's interesting to know. So let's I'll take a quick let's change the directions a little bit more, and we'll talk about other than the uh, I wanted to know uh, between art, and because you are also into a lot of you're politically very aware, so art and activism, which do you think has a stronger consequence to the future? Can you even choose one side over the other?
I believe that art has greater say over, you know, the human soul than
Okay.
like explicit political activism. So I believe art has can build a sense of life affirming situation, or like, you know, or like it grabs us unaware of ourselves, which is like a, you know, a major thing, you know, like being an artist, like, you know, like your emotions, like he communicates to you via the emotions, and that is like, you know, it could be much more you know, I don't know, like we could be under its spell like in a much more profound and subtler way. So which I believe has tremendous
And you're saying they might just have a longer reach into the
yeah,
light
yeah, yeah.
is thrown longer by the art,
True.
sort of.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true.
Who do you want to connect with your poems? Like, who do you write for? Do you have an audience in mind?
Yeah. So when I write, you know, the default audience is a discerning Indian English reader. A
Hmm.
discerning reader. Discerning is like somebody who reads between the lines, or like who knows the nuance of the text or whatever, you know,
Right.
something like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Indian,
He's a
and you
reader.
say Indian. I mean, do you not want? I mean,
No. I mean, like, so when people say like, if at all there is something like the idiom of Indian English, no,
right,
I would mean in that sense. But then it's for any discerning reader. Like, no, the aim of a writer is to write, you know, of an artist is to pursue art, is to pursue depth. You know,
right,
so my friend is the reader who
hmm,
puts in the effort to, you know, unravel the perceived sense of depth in what I want to write.
right. Hmm. Okay, so 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 with your art, you don't mind having you think it's important to keep the conversation flowing, like it should incite
True,
conversations, because a lot of
true.
time there is an entire group of artists who believe that they write for themselves, or like nobody in particular, but just to like
No.
believe what you
They might say that in a philosophical sense, in that they write to please a seeker in themselves, something like that.
right,
You know, like they have certain ideals about what their writing should be, and their
right,
writing is an act in pursuit of that ideal.
mm,
So, but then that ideal itself has all these, you know, aspects, in the sense that it's published by, say, a major publisher, and it's like it's gone through like many rounds of editing, like, you know, so the you know, the concerns are primarily aesthetic than overtly political. You know, it's like
right,
a very well written poem subsumes my cultural politics. It's not that, you know, the culture politics is at the forefront. It's like like there is this effort on my part to write a poem that is poem in the conventional sense of how literature is assumed, or like consumed, or like what is it, read and, you know, enjoyed or whatever. Then the culture politics is like subsumed in, like it is something for the reader to like, you know, read between the lines, like do his or her homework and get to know like the what are the subtext and nuances of, yeah.
okay, okay, makes sense, fair enough, yes.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to read one of your poems, like, and then we
Yeah.
can should I? uh,
Yeah.
so I'll read it. It's
Mm.
called The Language of the Skies. Migrant birds script calligraphy of a nascent canon in the comatose blue sky, inspiration from a Malayalam poem. Poetic forms like the sonnet or the ghazal, laundered and left to dry on a clothesline, clouds imperfectly drift like a poem translated into free verse, drenching us in tales from the other side of twilight. Chisel oneself into a toiling wordsmith, shape-shifting the body text onto the diction, trade the sky-clad coarse terrain, the public-private tessellation woven into second skin garment, like the tan lines on pale pigmentation. In a bilingual edition, I see the poem and its translation across the page as if reclining on a double bed. I always imagine a third poem, a perfect translation of the first, like a statue of a woman chiseled in unwrinkled time. I think there it ends. No, the empire has ebbed, the not so emaciated waistline of a patriarch. I see language in a dim twilight, drawing its strength from its shadow like a tall yesteryear monument. I think this is a separate poem, right? Yes, because the previous one, it sort of ended there, at least for me. But the next one doesn't have a a title with it. I think it was quite beautiful. Actually, there was quite a few poems, and what I liked best about this poem is this idea of the perfect translation of a third poem existing somewhere. I think it's you know, among many other things. I'll not go into the details of the this whole volume of history and roots that we have been talking about with the like vernacular, the source. I want to talk about the translated, this whole scaffold of translation that you use, like you keep weaving. I felt this perfect, the idea of the perfect third translation. It sort of defines the crisis of all translators, all mindful translators, because you are constantly fighting. You're constantly looking for that perfect third translation, especially when you are like you have assigned yourself the torture of carrying, translating a vernacular art into an English art. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to share that, and there are quite a few poems. So this is one of the ones that I really like. So if you could just comment on this poem, I mean, if you.
Yeah. So the thing is, number 14, right? So in this, so in a bilingual
No,
edition,
number
I see
13
the poem.
actually. This is the number 13. Actually, 12, 13. It flows. The language of the skies.
Language of the skies, and then yeah. So the thing is, I have that whatever. So I had this some kind of image that clouds are like drifting imperfectly. So clouds were conceived somewhere else, like there is sun rays, heat of the sun on some lake or whatever, some ocean somewhere, and the water is evaporated, like it's in the skies, it's in the cloud, and clouds have drifted, say, from so many kilometers, and they are going to rain here now. So it's like, so translation is something like physical distance traveling, some in a way. So in that way, and also I always like free words, like are they in metric, or like I used to be surprised when Hindi poems used to be translated in English in rhyme and meter. There are like what is it, metric translations of Dante and free verse translations of Dante. So I used to be like quite amused by that. Those kind of
right.
Yeah,
even
and also
even
yeah.
Yes, because I have read, I don't know Sanskrit, but then I ended up reading a few versions of Kalidasa's works in Bengali. Some were free verse, some were, perfectly rhymed. So, and both were beautiful in their own ways. Actually, all three were beautiful in their own ways. But it's just that, I mean, the point is probably these variations are all attempts for a perfect third that never, it never happens, but that sort of, it is that goal that you never come, but it makes sense of your journey.
So about this part, so I used to look at this bilingual edition of Neruda. So Neruda used to have, like, there are books in which you can see the left page is
yes, I know. Yes,
either English or Spanish, and this side is English.
Yes.
If somebody
Even
speaks
like
Spanish
I
here,
think, yeah, Captain's
yeah.
Verses and some of the books I had, they were
Yeah,
bilingual
so I found
versions.
that
Yes.
very interesting. Like, it's as if on a double bed, and there are two people, like, like next to each other, and they're
Right.
all reclining on a double bed. So they're like,
Right.
there is the original poem and the translation. So the thing is, always maybe like, the original poem always has a dream that, there is this imaginary perfect translation, So as if I'm reading English, so I actually imagine that I'm reading the translator's brilliance and not really Neruda's brilliance. So Neruda's poems, there is something beyond me, something beyond my comprehension that I try to capture in this statue of a woman chiseled in unwrinkled time.
Yes. Yes. It's
Yeah,
wonderful. That's really a
yeah,
wonderful observation. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay. So now I have some very typical craft questions.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite tools that you use in crafting your tools? As in, some poets have an affinity for crafting metaphors. Some use some other. Do
Um,
you have a favorite, like a rhetorical or composition tools, or you're searching? I
yeah,
mean, that's fine. You
yeah. No, actually, I used to feel that, sometimes I have an excess of simile. I don't know if
uh,
that is true. And sometimes I have an excess of simile, or like I look for us, certain phrases which I perceive are elegant. Yeah, elegant.
yes.
I don't know. It's just, my writing is mostly like that. I perceive some a phrase that I perceive as
No,
elegant.
I see that
Or,
because there's sometimes there's a real abundance of images that come in forms of
uh,
similes.
uh,
So yeah, I mean, I've seen that. So okay.
mm,
And
mm.
how many drafts do you actually do? Like do you
Yeah, so
draft your
many drafts. So this is, yeah. So I think all major slightly accomplished poets, they'll be like reworking their drafts n
Yes,
number of
yes,
times. So writing is basically editing and rewriting. So like,
yes,
otherwise you're just taking notes. Yeah, our first draft is some kind of notes. So
yes,
what happens later on is the mature whatever, something that can be released to the world. Yeah.
right. Um, and what are you reading right now? I mean, are you reading any book right now?
Yeah, I'm reading. There is this collection of poems by Grace Nichols. She's a
Okay,
Caribbean poet. She has
okay,
these collections published with Redax Books. So one of the books is like her collected poems, not really collected. It's like new and selected poems, which have most of the benchmark poems, sort of poems. That's one thing. Secondly,
do you read more
secondly,
than
like
one book at
no,
one go, or
oh yeah, like, I'm not really a very systematic kind of reader.
oh
I
no, that's fine.
read
I
here and
mean,
there.
yeah,
Yeah. I do. Like, I read. Generally, I read all these usual, not really literary stuff. In the sense that
okay,
newspapers, whatever, all these articles, reviews. Like so. Okay, so our online community, there's something called the Quarantine Train. Maybe you've heard of it.
right,
So we have weekly, twice meetings in which we discuss various poets, etc. So I keep abreast of that.
okay,
That's one thing. Yeah. Secondly, like recently there was this anthology of 14 young international poets edited by a poet by name Philip Nicolaier. Maybe you've heard of him. He runs a magazine Fulcrum. So I was
okay.
reading the poems of the fellow poets who are like from various nations, and half of them were Indian. Like those those kinds of things. And
Okay.
yeah,
So you're into
this
are
is
you
how.
writing anything now, or any serious project, like
Yeah,
any
yeah. So
concrete
I have a
project?
project going on in which, I have a project going on in which, contrary to the popular perception about Kerala, Kerala did have slavery. Slavery,
Oh, okay.
like selling of human beings like slaves. So, which who were Dalits. So I am trying to do a project length book on poems,
Hmm.
which deal with slavery, retrieval of memory, language, like loss of the language, or like those kind of stuff. It's like a project in which I try to do a lot of history writing, like when
Right.
slaves, the offsprings of slaves were taught English language, or like the
Oh, okay.
archival material, yeah, archival material on these aspects, and like how a poem can be constructed out of eraser. There is a procedure by eraser.
Oh,
Never
so
heard of it. Like you get a
it is
text
not a
and you,
creative project. Is it a creative project or it's a research
yeah, it
project?
is. It is. It is. It's about poetry. It
Oh,
basically
okay.
all these are poems. Yeah, yeah. So it's like
Nice.
I created. Yeah, I try to create some kind of narrative around the life of a erstwhile slave, etc. How language can be empowering. I don't know. all those aspects, like, yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's one
well,
thing.
all
Secondly,
the best.
I
We
want
want
to,
to
yeah, yeah.
see it in print
Also, I
very
want to
soon.
develop this, yeah, Love After Babel chapbook series. I want to
Mhm.
develop it into like, much more, I don't know, uh, much more like a full-length collection sort of stuff in which there are so many pages about translation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds interesting. So
Mm.
another questions. We talked a little bit about you writing prose or fiction, right? So are you still working on fictions, or you still want
Yeah,
to?
yeah, yeah. So I'm nursing ambitions to like write some stories,
Right.
and also write a work on a very important novel,
Okay.
that talks about, whatever.
I don't remember where I heard it, but I heard someone say there is at least one novel inside everyone. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
needs to be
exactly.
written. And if
Yeah,
you
that's
have
true. That's
two,
true.
then that's great. And then if you have more,
Yeah. No,
then you're
generally, like when poets try to enter fiction, they write fiction so carefully. They write
yeah,
with some kind of some kind of cadence in the language, something like
right.
that. So maybe like that's something
I
that is
personally enjoy reading prose written by poets so much. Like
exactly.
I have read, now that I think about it, I've read quite a few of them, quite a few of works of prose or fiction written by who are like poets, celebrated poets, and those are I found them beautiful. Like those are linguistically, even thought wise also. So they generally come out as very beautiful artworks. Maybe because they have a sharper ear, I would say, uh, to words and nuances and how language flows. Maybe they have a closer, they feel the pulse more deeply. I don't know what, but most of the time, it has been a positive experience so far for me. So well, all the best. We want to see your stories for sure. As we know, the current political power structure of India, contemporary India, is has more than minor friction points with all those not fitting into the sort of rightful boxes of their highly polarized caste and class narrative. As a poet standing for the people who have been strategically kept silenced for centuries, what's your artistic stance? Like, do you have a stance? How do you feel about it?
How do I feel about what, like
This whole scenario, because things have been really like uh, hot and heartbreaking at points.
I feel that like we are the cusp of a big change. Like
Yes.
lots and lots of marginalized voices are now speaking out, and the discourse is now dented. I don't know. I'm quite optimistic.
Okay, that gives me
Yeah,
that's great to know, because we see
yeah.
stories of hopelessness than hope most of the time. That has been the I don't know, theme of the time. I don't know why. So I wanted to
Mm,
ask
mm.
someone who actually stands at the, who knows the center, your thoughts about it, because there's so many news we hear about hegemonizing, forcefully hegemonizing voices, and marginalized, pushing margins even to further margins and darknesses. So those are the sort of some popular narratives. But if you are still hopeful that
Yeah,
you're
true,
getting.
true,
Okay.
true, true. No, like it's the the marginalized writers need to, like, what I know, organize themselves and work hard to make their voice heard. It's
Yes.
not that the modern neoliberal system will
Hmm.
give somebody the rightful due. Like we need to work towards making ourselves matter in this world. It's
Yes.
something like that,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
So yeah, so you think both the sides should sort of gain their soil, like earn their
yeah,
soil,
yeah,
so to
yeah.
speak. So, mhm.
Exactly.
Okay. uh what, we are almost at the end of our, I have a one last question, and then I want to listen to one other poem, because an
Yeah.
interview with a poet, there cannot be a better end to an interview than poetry itself. So we'll hear another poem from you. And before that, I just wanted to know, possessing a multilingual tongue and sensibility, and choosing to write in a language that is not your mother tongue, what are some of the struggles you have to overcome? I'm sure we already spoke about quite a few of it in our today's discussion, but also, like, if you have some consolidated advice for because there are so many of if not exactly sharing your position, but there are so many bilingual writers attempting art. So if you have any consolidated wisdom or advice,
No,
if
no,
you'd like to
I
share.
would suggest that being bilingual is a blessing. I'm not really bilingual. Like I have English as my primary language, but being bilingual is really a big blessing in disguise. Like where
Right.
you can conceive a cultural text to different languages. That's one thing. Secondly, there is always a easy path to acceptance by by writing what the establishment is wanting to hear. So it's up to you to provoke the establishment with your right choice of words.
Right,
It's
right,
it's for us to up the ante. It's for us to trigger the conversation, or ask the provoking question, or talk about what really matters to the conscience of the writer,
right.
than the market. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mohan. It has been really very engaging and nice conversation today. If you'd like us to read another poem.
Yeah, so I'll read a relatively new poem that I had
Yes,
written
please.
during the quarantine era. So it's in your
Okay.
WhatsApp. You can just take a look. Yeah.
Okay,
So
sure.
the poem
Thank
is
you so much.
the poem is titled "Serving Quarantine."
Yes.
Serving Quarantine. So it's inspired from the probably a well-known poem by Charles Simic. It's titled "Serving Time." Okay, his poem is about being imprisoned, serving time in prison. So for us, it's serving time in quarantine.
Quarantine.
Okay,
Okay.
so the poem is this. Is like this. Before being remanded to the death row of the sick, I was locked in a cell the size of my smartphone's screen. Before being remanded to the death row of the sick, I was locked in a cell the size of my smartphone's screen. Serving my time, I read many books. Serving my time, I read many books. First on pathology and medicine, then the Indian Penal Code. Then came lexicons of necessity and end rhyme between need and greed. Finally, books on economics to choose between two nightmares. One, death heralded by a sensation of drowning. Second, the prospect of a slow, starving death. A little ventriloquism surrounds me.
Wonderful. It's really beautiful. Thank you so much. I mean, for today's conversation, I consciously avoided pandemic, because it has been such a loud and overarching theme in the recent times that I actually I didn't want to kind of get into another, get down the rabbit hole, so to say, because once you get there. So, but I'm happy that we ended up touching it at least, and it's wonderful. So thank you so much, Mohan,
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
we wish you all the best with all your future projects and books and stories and poems, and we will eagerly wait to read them in print whenever they come out. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Please keep in touch.
Thank you.
Antonym is
I'm
really
honored.
happy to host you.
I'm honored.
Yes.
And I'm so thankful for the effort you put in, to.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you.